phone over to my mother, who was, I think, the main push behind this film, and she sounds a lot more professional. So.
Well, I don't know about that. Thomas was in a program at the University of California where he took it was a dual degree program in liberal arts and engineering. He had just finished the liberal arts part at UC Santa Cruz in film, and I had just lost my job. So I said, let's make a documentary film. And we did not have a topic. And we were looking around for a topic, and I happened to tell a friend of mine about how my husband's parents had been stuck in Japan during the war, and he looked at me, he said, "You don't think you have a topic for a documentary film?" And we went from there. Thomas had all the expertise as far as equipment we would need, and so on. I had been in management. It turns out a producer of a film is a manager. So I set up a schedule, and I lined up the equipment, and I lined up, it was kind of like running a software project, which I had done. So that was the background. And one of the real incentives was Taz Iwata, who unfortunately passed away, did say to me one time, she said, "Nobody knows about us." And that was a great incentive. She was a wonderful person. So was Mary Tomita. I don't know if any of you met her, a local woman from Oakland, very progressive thinker. And by the time we finished production, I remember saying to Thomas, if we did nothing but meet these wonderful people, we would have, it was totally worthwhile. Thomas, I've never asked you this, but how was it working with your mother on a film?
She waited till today. No, I thought it was, I'm the one that's with ethnic Japanese ancestry and all that, but I was just the guy behind the camera mainly. I think we were it was an interesting experience, because we always knew Grandma and Grandpa's story vaguely, through this or that's, story we'd hear over dinner when we're visiting them in Chicago. And I think it was working with you was like working with any other, filmmaker when you're on a project and just discovering more and more and more and, realizing more and more that there's so many of these stories that have not been told, and that, just when you kind of take that, when you go through that kind of undertaking, realize, how are we going to put this into a film? And is this going to be 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 90 minutes, and just that kind of whole experience was kind of, was new and exciting, and it didn't really, you were just the producer.
Can you tell us a little bit about the research process and how long production took? I was struck by how many people from the Bay Area and Los Angeles, Californians, were featured in the film. How did you go about finding these stories?
Well, Thomas was still at Santa Cruz, so I was doing most of the pre-production. We knew my husband's parents had been in Japan, and Ken had done some audio taping, so we were able to use that. And then Ken's mother said, "Aren't you going to talk to Taz Iwata?" And Ken had never known that she was in Japan during the war. Lifetime, very close friends. Ken's dentist, Dale Uryu, some of you may know Dale. Two of his patients were in Japan during the war, and he put them on us onto them. I contacted a guy at Stanford who had written a book about Tokyo Rose, and he couldn't help me, but he said, "You really ought to talk to Harumi Befu." We met with Harumi Befu, and he said, "Oh, I'm sure you've talked to Peter Sano." And we said, "No, who's Peter Sano?" So, but every, I got in touch with the National Museum in LA, academics all over the United States, and everyone said, "Oh, I'm so glad you're making this film because there's hardly anything that's been written about it." So as far as books and so on, very little, yeah.
And briefly, before we open it up to questions from the audience, I wanted to give Mr. Sano a chance to speak, and maybe you could fill in the details of your story and how you found your way back to the United States and how that transition was for you.
Yes, I'll just very briefly say, emphasize the fact that when I went to Japan, looking at this film, looks like maybe not all, but most of the Niseis were just temporarily going to Japan and then eventually coming back. For me, when I left the United States, my plans were to go to Japan and live there forever. I didn't have any plan or thought of coming back to the United States. And this actually happened after the war was over and I started working in Japan. I found that I really didn't spend that much time with my adopted parents. Only total probably about 4 months is all. I was always in Tokyo going to school, so I did not spend any time. That's why I never got used to them. And then what happened was my mother decided that, or suggested that I come back to the United States to go back to school. And that's the reason, one of the main reasons I came back to the United States. And they also, that family adopted another girl who would have been my younger sister. What turned out was she married a man, a medical doctor who became a medical doctor, and she took over the Suzuki family. So I re-registered when I came back to the United States and became a Sano again. I guess that's all.
Yeah, okay, thank